Final Labs is a startup in Hong Kong, located in the Hong Kong Science Park, and we specialize in AI language AI, in fact. So it composed of text and speech. So that means we use machine to process text and speech automatically. So that, in other words, we want to make a machine understand what you're saying, what you are typing, and then try to respond. And this is what we're doing. So because we're headquartered in Hong Kong, we target a lot on the languages used in Hong Kong, like Cantonese, English, Mandarin, and kind of mixed language. This is very common to use in Hong Kong. And the Cantonese is used in Hong Kong is mainstream Cantonese used in Hong Kong, but we can also work, our system also worked for the Cantonese in Guangzhou and in the Greater Bay Area. Besides that, our language can support some languages in Southeast Asia, like Thai, Indonesia, Bahasa, even we go to the Arabics and French, and those languages we are supported.
I see you have talked about like different languages like French, Cantonese is also English. Is there like the syntax different makes you harder or like easier to do natural language processing?
For the machine, so if you learn a language, you need to like a lot of data, like teaching a baby or teaching a kid how to learn a language. You need to feed him or her a lot of examples and what's the meaning, what's the correct answer. Through this process, we're teaching the machine to learn a language. Some languages are relatively easier, but some are harder. For those easier, we mean doesn't need that much amount of data, maybe the several hundred hours of data. And if you come to some harder language like Cantonese, I can consider as one of the hardest language. And you may need 1,000 hours of language, hours of data, so that we let the machine learn the language.
So it's like related to the number of symbols or alphabets in the language?
Yeah, it's somehow related. It's also related to how a character or a word how to pronounce. And when it comes to Cantonese or Chinese, different tones can mean different words, but it's not true for some European languages. So it depends on the nature of the language. So that's why some languages are harder. So we need more out data. Yeah.
Could you briefly introduce what Fintech is and how is its development progress in Hong Kong?
Okay, Fintech stands for financial technology. That means there's some technology used in the financial industry. Traditionally, we in the financial industry, many tasks are handled by humans. Maybe the machine try to help you, but when you come to a lot of repeated tasks and also some routine stuff, then we want to use machine more. So they want to save manpower, save the amount of hours you need to handle all the stuff. So Fintech, I would say, still technology involve information technology to try to help you to address problem in the financial industry.
Maybe we can also greet another guest. Gabriel, can you hear us?
Sorry, I think you've muted yourself.
Yes, sorry about that. I was saying, sorry that we can't meet in person. But I can see you guys. Yeah, you don't have to look at my screen. I can just look at you. The camera is actually on at the other end of the stage.
I want to ask Gabriel about some question. What do you think is the most important characteristic when starting a fintech project?
The most important characteristic for starting a fintech project. Understanding of what fin and tech are, especially the fin side. I think that a lot of people dive into financial industry without adequate understanding of how big and complex that financial industry is. yeah, I think that would probably be the biggest challenge.
Okay. So you guys just mentioned like there are like different branches in the fintech industry. Talk about like natural language processing, and also like I've also heard about like blockchain, and also some of them use like different artificial intelligence to empower information transmission. So could you guys talk about like what are some different branches in fintech right now?
Yeah, you guys mean me and the and you would you like me to start first?
Yeah, I can mention a bit of the fintech branches. We have like something related to the regulation. We call the regulatory technological regtech. Some relate to the supervision. We call subtech. Some relate to insurance, instech. So there are many different kind of technologies. Depends on how you apply to it.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that red tech is probably one of the most foundational part of fintech, although also pretty boring for most people. And then there's different branches of fintech, such as doing payment specific things or insurance specific things. Yeah, and in terms of the technology side, yeah, you can use AI, blockchain, all that stuff. I would caution thinking from the technology first, because you tend to be biased toward a certain solution. And while maybe not understanding fully what the problem is, I would recommend for students to take their time and understand what the problem they're trying to solve before selecting some solution and becoming perhaps biased in adopting a certain technology.
Okay, thank you for your response. Also, like I see fintech as really revolutionary, especially to the banking and financial industry. So, could you talk about like some challenges that you guys face to popularize like fintech, and also like how does it collaborate or even substitute the traditional banking industry in Hong Kong?
Well, I think that fintech in fintech innovation is very closely tied to the traditional banking. There's a term in English called frenemies. It's friends and enemies. Everyone in the space really knows each other and collaborates with each other. And there's no, it's not a mutually exclusive thing. So the ecosystem really is there to support each other and also to compete with each other. Yeah, did you have something else to add?
So I see challenges mainly in twofold. The first one is traditional bank or some other financial institution. They place reliability is one of the top priority. So we want the system to be highly reliable. And when it comes to new technology, they may not well tested. They may not used by a lot of people. They may not have a lot of references. So they may be hesitate to use new technology, especially when it comes to new things like AI, all this stuff. So another is about data. So if we want to build AI technology, you need a lot of data. AI is highly related to big data, so we need a lot of data. How you make the data? So in the financial institution, data is highly secure. So if you got a leakage of data, maybe a breach of privacy or so, the regulator, like the Hong Kong Monetary Authority or other authorities may try to give you a penalty with a big fine. So they may not try to take the risk. So having them provide data to build an AI system can be hard. So we need how to solve the problem. From our own perspective, we may need to build a so-called base model, and then try to import the base model and bring everything to the premises of the financial institution, like maybe in their own server, bring everything to their own building facility, so that everything is secure. Everything is inside the firewall. And then we build a system there, so everything will not be leaked out. So this is how sometimes we handle this kind of data issues. So I think challenges mainly come from these two issues.
I expect you to resonate. Sorry.
Yeah, I would
ahead.
like to add on top of those are two very good points. Number one is with the newer technology, some of the older incumbents and regulators may not understand it very fully. We see that with blockchain. Especially with blockchain, there is a lot of confusion of what blockchain actually is and what it can do. The cryptocurrency side also adds a lot of confusion to this. A lot of people mistaken blockchain solutions with cryptocurrencies in that space. And there's, of course, a lot of reluctance on the regulation side, as well as the adoption from institutions. Understandably, speed of adoption actually isn't necessarily an issue. I think that in fintech, the watchword should be careful, not as particularly speed. And in terms of the data side, the amount of data and the veracity of data is also quite important. Especially given that the internet wasn't built with implicit trust layer or identity layer. So we are seeing a lot of people exploiting these weaknesses, and that's why we see a lot of internet fraud, and that basically spills over into the fintech world as well. So the good news is that the emerging Web3 world is putting some solutions forward to make sure that data is handled in a trusted and a more privacy respecting way. For example, a better way to handle consent and let users control their own data. So I think this will be the trend, and hopefully the institutions and regulators will be able to work together with the emerging industries to come up with better solutions for people.
I also see both of you guys mention about like getting trust and also like about the information gap that you guys might face like when you guys are still a startup. Could you guys share about like what is your experience in tackling such issue and like trying to persuade user that your technology is actually useful? Because I believe like this problem is not only apply in the fintech industry but also apply to all entrepreneurs, right?
Okay, so you can persuade someone that your product is good by offering them a good product, basically, right? The challenge is it's a challenge even for us to explain how our technology and our solutions would provide more trust or more privacy without getting too deep in the woods with the technical jargon. I think how to market in a clear but responsible way to convey the message is a challenge, ongoing challenge, especially for people of a tech background like ourselves. We speak kind of a different language. It's not better or worse, but if we do want to reach wide-scale adoption, we need to find a way to better convey the value proposition of these new products.
So I would say in the financial world, there are two sides. One is on the regulator, one is the financial institution. So besides you need to encourage the financial institution use our technology, you also need to persuade the regulator that that technology is trustful. So for both sides, as long as we need to target them and then to encourage them to use our own technologies. And another way how to address this is you join a community. Let's say we are located in Hong Kong Science Park, we're part of the Hong Kong Science Park community. Science Park try to create an ecosystem so that for the startup to address the different issues somehow together. And Science Park also take the need to have different kind of event, maybe to invite different financial institutions, different banks, insurance companies to try to event, to try to engage each other. I think this kind of engagement is also important. Yeah.
I have a question. Like Hong Kong has been famous for its banking and financial industry. And then do you think fintech can well combine with other traditional technology, traditional industry like banking or e-com, or it will raise like some conflicts?
The joke that fintech companies exist to get acquired by traditional banks. But
I
not
think
do all the time. That's one interaction.
Also like what are the challenges you guys have encountered when implementing a fintech startup in Hong Kong? Talk about like some challenges you guys face and then like what lessons you guys have learned, and give some advice to like the participants on, because I'm sure like many of the participants are interested in starting a startup.
Yeah, I guess what I said before, understanding the financial world, as my co-panelist, Mr. Lam, right? You mentioned regulators many times. I think if you count the word, we say regulators in this panel, or regulation, yeah, it's quite a lot. You'll find the occurrence because that you cannot move forward without satisfying these legal and regulatory requirements, especially important in finance because you're dealing with people's money. This is the most important aspect. So understanding like why the financial industry works the way it does first before jumping to like assumptions. Like I was at a hackathon earlier where they were doing fintech products. A lot of students jumped into and assumed like maybe the UI or user experience is very important, and hitting on the current user experience of financial institutions or banks, etc. Like not ideal. Okay, yeah, that's right. But there are certain reasons why the resources are deployed that way, or there are certain reasons why certain products are offered and not offered. Certain features would be useful or not. Some features, may actually be a loss-making feature for the bank, and I think the only way to learn is to really talk to the people themselves, like the institutions, the industry, the regulators, and of course also the end users, and have an idea, empathy, like design thinking, methodology, right? So, like empathize with the stakeholders and see things from their perspective. I think that would be overarching, very important. Yeah.
So I'll also add on one point is technology is emerging, so and trends come up very fast, and new technology come up every month, and even for the same piece of technology, maybe there another way to do it in the next month. So you need to catch everything, go to the front of the technologies, and then try to adopt it. So as a fintech company, you cannot just rely on one thing. You may need to adapt to the world, and so as a startup, so you may need to get your cash flow, so that you can sustain your office, sustain your employee, and at the same time you need to sell a product to the financial institution fast enough. You need to do your so-called POC, proof of concept, good enough, so that they will try to adopt your technology. Normally, for this kind of selling process, if you're selling to a financial institution, it may take some time. It's not that fast. It's not talk about 1 or 2 months and you can finish anything. You may take six months or so in order to get them engaged to sign a contract with you. So how you can sustain that way is challenging. So if students want to have a startup like this, they need to have a well plan and talk to some people who have more experience, then they would solve the problem easier.
Is true that's
Yeah, I would like to add to what you just said about that. Students in general don't know much about the financial industry. I think even when they're taking some financial related degree, there's always a gap between what you learn in school and what's going on in the real world. So finding like, for example, mentors, like I don't want to like volunteer you, but people like us on stage, right? We would be happy to like give you our 2 cents, even just for a minute or two, put you on like at least the right path forward, to make sure that you don't make some common mistakes. That's like, you don't want to make like common mistakes. You want to make creative mistakes. So like the ones where you're actually doing product development and really pushing the edge, trying to apply new technology. Like for example, with the machine learning, like what my co-panelists covered with machine learning, very high and basic concept. If you really want to apply AI, you really got to like read a lot and understand the cutting edge. If you want to do blockchain, don't just assume you can just slap an application on some platform and it can go. There's like a lot of things that a blockchain application requires. You just need to really get really deep into that. So deep understanding of fintech means deep understanding of the financial world and deep understanding of the technology. Yeah, that would be my takeaway.
Somebody asking about some question about fintech. Maybe let's open the chat box.
Oh, the chat box. Okay, sure. Thank you for your thoughts. I was curious to know both your thoughts on fintech solutions as social enterprises. Currently, I have been thinking about providing alternative credit scoring, specifically catered for people of lower incomes to get loans more easily approved and at lower interest rates. Thank you, Mr. Das, for your question. Yeah, would you like me to go first?
Let me read the questions. Maybe you answer the question first.
Yeah, so for social enterprises, this alternative credit scoring, you would be competing with the existing credit scoring system. I guess the first thing I would do is to understand what currently is the situation, why it works, and what maybe it could be improved, and then make improvements on top of that. So if you do social enterprises specifically for lower incomes for them to get loans, then you would have to build this trust architecture from scratch. So blockchain probably will be a part of the solution. And the main parts of this kind of solution would be something to do with verifiable identity and some way for people to provide consent for their information to be checked so that they could access certain services. And then all of this, make sure that the operating costs make economic sense because no one wants to operate at a loss. Yeah, these would be my initial thoughts.
So right now you defined the problems, and I think that you may need to try to look for references. Is there any similar cases in other parts of the world? You may want to do it in Hong Kong, but the regulation will different, how you can address these kind of issues, and what's the technology you need, blockchain or AI will be part of the solutions, and are you familiar with all this kind of technology, or you may need to hire somebody, or you work with other people to build such kind of solutions? So you need to put everything on the table and then try to figure out a right way to do all things together.
Yeah, and I think that this idea is definitely not new, and a lot of people are tackling this. That should not dissuade you from pursuing this idea. Actually, the more people that are doing it means it's probably worth doing. What I've seen is that there's actually a system from the HKMA. They have a system called the Commercial Data Interchange. This sounds very similar to that kind of system, but your application is for people of lower income to get loans. So as my co-panelist, Mr. Lam said, Dr. Lam, sorry, he would advise you to look at existing solutions, and I would say the same. Like, definitely see how people do it now and what people are doing. So you can improve on the situation if you don't have a full understanding of what is happening right now.
I got some question for Albert, and it's Gabriel, sorry. As you have some previous experience in entrepreneurship in Germany and also Canada, will you describe the difference between the entrepreneurial environment among Hong Kong and the other countries?
Well, every place has its plus and minuses, comparable advantages, right? Germany and Europe. Well, Germany mostly is a very rule-based society. Yeah, in Germany, there's two words that you'll immediately learn: verboten and Ordnung. So verboten means like not allowed, and Ordnung means everything is all right. So as long as you follow the rules, then you're fine. The great thing about the German and the European framework is that they have a lot of principles, you know, of how to do things in the proper way, so-called to say, right? Like for example, the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, came from the EU, right? This is how privacy ought to be handled on the internet, right? They're the first ones to push it through. It's actually accumulation of a very long history of the data and privacy violations, you know, stemming from, you know, if you think back all the way to World War II, right? The secret police of the Nazis and Adolf Hitler, right? How they have blatant violations even through the Soviet times, right? So this is the experience of the Europeans. So I think the advantage of looking into the Europeans, even though they are very heavy, regulation heavy, they have a lot of principles and things that you could emulate in your product design. As for Canada, it's Canada is a small country. It's a very big country by landmass, but actually quite small. It's like a fraction of the United States. So it's a small country next to a superpower. So the people there tend to be also more community-based, right? And also more principled, like the Europeans. So their culture is very similar in that sense. In fact, most people in Canada will eventually build a startup in the States where it's a bigger market and higher level competition, and or elsewhere in other places like Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is, yeah, finally Hong Kong. It's an international city. We might not notice that living here, but it's globally competitive and attracts the best talents. Hong Kong is also quite top down rather than bottom up. So in Canada, things tend to be more grassroots. Hong Kong tends to be more from top down. So if you're to do a startup in Hong Kong, you would probably engage with government and the big existing institutions more often than, say, in Canada.
Thank you for your insightful response. Oh, there's also a question from Jackie in the chat. He asked that, may I know the path of having a startup? What is the most important factor for becoming successful? Having a group of nice colleagues, capital support, or other minor yet important factors?
I think that having a good mentor is the most unfair advantage you can have. In fact, if you can have a group of good mentors, yeah, that will help guide you through these different challenges. So yeah, all these things about colleagues, capital support, and all these other things, you'll encounter all these problems and a lot more during your journey. If you have good mentors, they could guide you through the storm.
So I would say that all these factors are important, and it depends on the stages which stage you are in. At the very beginning, you may just have yourself and or one or two more people, and then at the time you may need to master anything. But when you try to grow, then you have more colleagues. How to retain your colleagues is also important. Right now, many people, it's easier to maybe resign and then join another company, or they try to just go aboard, do something else, and then it's quite hard to retain the talent. And people in Hong Kong tend to go anywhere. Like maybe some people go to China, some people may go overseas, and it's a little bit hard to give a very nice package to the colleague, especially you're in the early stage. How to retain data? You cannot compare the benefit of a company at a big company overseas. It's very hard. So how to retain good colleague is a kind of problem you really need to solve.
Oh, I would like to something that Dr. Lam mentioned earlier about the long sales cycle. So if you're doing something in fintech, especially, you got to know your industry and the seasonality of it, and typically how long deal flow lasts. So as Dr. Lam said, like in fintech, 6 to 12 months, maybe beyond, is very typical for business. So if you don't have a plan to have like the cash flow, you know, to keep your colleagues, right, your office, etc., like that probably be one of the things that keep all business owners awake. Cash flow, cash is king. That's what they say, right? Cash is king and customer is God. So those would be, yeah, the two things that keep entrepreneurs up at night.
Echo to Gabriel, how do you get the money? So you may not get the money from the client at that time. You may need to invite more investor so that they can invest in company and then give you some good enough cash flow to sustain your company.
Thank you. There's also a question for Albert. So as your company is based in HKSTP, so do you think the support given is enough? Or do you think, do you have any special experience interacting with like other industry elites?
No, I think the support is really good. So we are part of the Hong Science Park ecosystem. And Science Park try to take the lead to organize this kind of event and try to invite different people. We are sometimes most of the time part of that. And we also have different chance to talk to the different people, maybe even in the senior management of the financial institution, so that we have chance to sell our solution to them. Getting a handshake is also important at the very beginning. Once they know who you are, and then it makes things much easier. So I would say Hong Science Park, or even in Cyberport, or they give a very good support to the companies. Yeah.
Also, like, some of us is also curious, like, because fintech requires like a lot of technical knowledge and understanding. Will you guys like collaborate with other companies or like organizations in order to like create a product?
Definitely, yes, yeah. It's very hard to be completely self-reliant in anything you do, right? And like even in life in general, especially so in fintech. Financial industry is a very complex, right? And technologies also are very interdependent and complex. Like even like blockchain, right? Blockchain solutions have blockchain as one of the major players, but not the only major part of the cast. Like you still need a lot of privacy enhancing technologies. You need to have other standardized components. You of course need like traditional kind of mobile or web development. You may have traditional programming. If you have AI component, then you need an AI expert. Yeah, so it's very rarely that you don't work with anyone else when you're developing some sort of product. Yeah, getting to know the community. I remember Dr. Lam mentioned before that the fintech community is quite big and also quite small in Hong Kong, right? So it's very advantageous for everyone to be sharing experiences and resources. Who knows who you may work with?
Okay, we also see another question in the chat box. It's from Chloe, and then she asked, like, I heard a few mentions about regulations in fintech. So I wanted to hear about your thoughts on whether the regulatory environment hinders or aids the potential growth of the industry.
Regulators' job is to make sure that the interest of the public is protected. So they have to balance between speed, efficiency, and also like carefulness. I think that it is not the job of the regulator to go fast and furious, especially not Hong Kong, because what we do here, the world is watching. There's only a few financial centers in the world, right? So it doesn't surprise me if Hong Kong is maybe the last or almost the last ones to make a big move on anything.
Yeah, say the Hong Kong regulator try to strike the very good balance between how to protect the citizens in Hong Kong and also the financial institution, and they're not trying to give all the freedom to anyone to do anything in the financial industry, but in the same way they try to put enough protections. And I would say the Hong Kong regulators are kind of open enough so to attract new technology. Right now they issue a different white paper on new technology, trying to explain what technology the industry should be applied. And I think they are doing quite a good job on that.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's another question from Jackie. Can you scroll down a bit? Thank you. So he's asking, like, when talking about fintech, most of the company in Hong Kong are located in Cyberport. How would Dr. Lam compare the environment and support given between HKSTP or Cyberport? Is there any big difference?
Even though most are located in Cyberport, but getting more and more fintech company in Science Park right now, and they try to. We're not competing each other. They try to bring an ecosystem, and even though, let's say, in the last week, Science having a fintech event, and they also invite Hong Kong Science Park represented like us try to attend the event. So I would say the important is care about the location. Whether you want to in the Cyber or Cyberport or in the Science Park, the location is a kind of consideration. If maybe you want to close to Central, maybe you can Cyberport. But if you in case want to, you don't mind go to the new territories, and I think, yeah, Science Park is also it's a good place to go. So I would say that both parties give enough support, and they try doing a good job to create ecosystem for the fintech companies.
Thank you.
I have something. My company is also incubated at Science Park. We've been supported for years, and I think the experience have been wonderful, as I concur. I think that it is about location. I'd like to add that the Science Park also has a fintech hub located right next to the City University of Hong Kong and near Kowloon Tong Station. So it's not like too far from the financial center, like hub central, right? And I think there is one, like the programs offered by Science Park and Cyberport are pretty much equivalent. The difference is in Science Park, there needs to be more technical or scientific, because that's part of their mandate. Where Cyberport does not have that mandate, where they said, oh, 50% of your team has to be a STEM personnel. So I think that is the difference between Cyberport and Science Park.
A follow-up question from Chloe. She is asking, like, which industries or component services do you both think have the most potential for disruptive growth in fintech?
Well, I think we're both represented on the stage, AI and blockchain, and generally data. Well, data itself doesn't mean much, but it's like what you do with the data and where the data comes from, and how to handle the data in a privacy respecting and respectful way in general. So that's kind of like the forefront. So I think the main trend is data. And then in relation, of course, blockchain and AI. There's a saying that identity is the new money and data is the new oil. You know, there's actually a lot of debate about what those actually mean, but that's like the trend of this decade. That and also because of the pandemic, I mean, that's also the reason why I'm here on the screen and not in person, right? There's a lot of interactions that are moving online, and we're seeing a trend of digital transformation where lots of services not just fintech services, like government services and other essential services are also moving online. So due to this transition to a digital world, the importance of trust and veracity of information is becoming very fundamentally important. So I think that will be some of the things to watch for this decade.
I also think the general acceptance of the new technology is important, like blockchain or AI. So if you come to the technology we're using right now, if they happened like 5 years ago, I guess maybe the general public did not accept that, and you will not have the chance to sell a product or let the others use your product. So I guess timing is so important. We may need to have a good education on the general public so that they try to accept new technologies. This is also important, I think.
Really so difficult to start a startup, and besides from like having enough knowledge about fintech, what kind of mentality you think is the most important when you're gonna run a new startup?
So you need to be open-minded. You need to accept that your technology may not be good enough. There are always new technology coming up. Maybe next week there will be another company using the very similar technology will be the major competitor of yourself. So you need to be open-minded and always look around and see what's the new technology, what's the state of the art, and then try to build the best solution in the community.
Yeah, I would build up on that and say that being very relentless and resourceful is very important because you are your own safety net. Whereas if you take a job, salaried work, you have a parachute, right? You're basically building a parachute when you jump out of the plane. That's what a startup is about. And being very having the resolve to see things through, which can both be a good and a bad thing, of course. Knowing when to give up and knowing when not to give up. There's no formula for this. You have to grow an intuition for it. You can't give up too easily, but at the same time, sometimes you have to give up on things.
Thank you. So there's another question from Nicola in the chat box. So she's asking, like, during the INT program, we heard the INT Undersecretary, Dr. David Chung, mention that a long child loop being developed for the future of innovation and technology in Hong Kong and GBA. So speaking of the differentiations between like Cyberport and HKSTP, so would there be any further specific industries that would be developed with the inauguration of the site?
So I think we are not talking about a specific piece of land. So we're talking about the whole industry in Hong Kong. Having that piece of land have a tight collaboration between Hong Kong and Shenzhen, also in the Greater Bay Area. I think different cities take different roles. Hong Kong may be good, have a good enough talent, and we are more in the upstream side. Maybe the Shenzhen have a more manpower on having good maybe software development, IT support, and maybe in a little bit lower end. So again, I guess different cities take different roles. Having that piece of land, we will try to make Hong Kong have a tighter collaboration, different city in the Greater Bay Area.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with what they're planning to do with that loop zone and how it would relate to Science Park or Cyberport. But in the context of the Greater Bay Area, this is an opportunity for more meaningful integration of the regions, because in this region there are actually 3 legal separate jurisdictions, right? And how do the people and because of 3 different jurisdictions, there are barriers, natural barriers for people, movement of commerce and people, right? So these kind of special zones are good sandboxes to try different integration strategies or policies, technologies, etc. like this. So one of the things that come up with in the blockchain space often is about again identity, so and veracity of information. So, for example, if you have documents issued to you in the mainland, are they useful here in Hong Kong? Well, it depends. It depends on how trusted they are, right? So these would be great opportunities to try out these kind of new setups and systems.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Albert Lam and Mr. Gabriel Chan for their sharing on fintech. So now let's move on to our next session, EduTech. So let's give a warm welcome to Professor Hao. He is going to tell you more about the situation and challenges of education in Hong Kong. Thank you, Professor. So
thank you so much for your help and your participation to our program. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Go upstairs for a moment.
Find me a better position, not blocking the chat room. So I assume that all of you would have like 12 questions in a quiz that you have to rate yourself. So let's do the ESS part. All 12 questions, the last option is correct. So easy to mark. Can I have the chat room? Please enter the number of questions you got it correctly. Probably if everyone got the questions correctly, I can stop here, right? Then you type in the number of questions. So the number of last option that you have chosen. Okay, we have 12 questions. And tell me how many questions you got correctly. Marking. or others haven't answered, or we have ones getting 7 items correct. It's really quite good. On average, when I presented the similar PowerPoint but much longer version, about 5% of the principals, like principals in Hong Kong, around 10% of them can get more than those by chance. So that the two participants getting 7, 6 is half of the item. So they're much better than most of the principals in Hong Kong already. Now let me go on. So what I'm presenting to you is mainly based on a large scale, probably the most influential education study in the world, what we call PISA. So what we are comparing are 15 years old children across the world, 80 economies. So most of, or even for those that you haven't heard of, most countries that you heard of or haven't heard of. Not working. So there are a lot of reports. If you are interested, you can look up the report. So for example, in 2018, they test 3 subjects, but they have more questions on reading. So in a reading test, they will give you blogs, some reviews of articles, and some news. And you have to link all these together to answer some questions. So it's an application of what you have learned in class. One typical example, okay, we can close the chat room. Thank you. So one typical graph result is that we compare the expenditure, education expenditure around the world. So the x-axis are the money spent in US thousands that you spend on education for children 6 to 15 years old, so around 10 years. But you can see a turning point here. The y-axis is the performance. So if you are spending less than like 50,000 US dollars for that 10 years, so it's around 5,000 per year. You convert it to Hong Kong dollars, so it's like 4,000 Hong Kong dollars a year, a month, right? You multiply it by 8 and then divide by 10 and then convert it into Hong Kong dollars, is around. So if a country or economy is not spending, is spending less than 4,000 a month, Hong Kong dollars, then the more money you are spending, the better your education is. But once you have reached that level, it depends on how you spend the money, which is much more important. So this is the kind of thing that we can get from data. For example, before this study, Finland, we thought that they are not existing and they are performing similarly. But after this PISA result, I think when we are talking about Finland, we like Finland, Finnish education is because of this study. So in the year 2000, suddenly Finland is very different from Sweden, for example. We find that they're doing things differently, although without data, we thought they are very similar. So these are the kinds that they are doing, we are getting from the data. So 2 years ago, people have been arguing who are the Hong Kongese, or how many Hong Kongese and Hong Kong are in Hong Kong. I don't know how many of you would have the correct guess, but I've asked a lot of professors and people doing research in Hong Kong. But I think it's amazing, even to Zhonglunban, the Chinese Community Relation Office. I think if we ask them, grade 3, 6, 9, parents and their children, are you born in Hong Kong? If we count all of them are born in Hong Kong, if we classify these people as Hong Konger or Hong Kongese, then in Hong Kong, actually, they are only 1/3, around 1/3 of them are born in Hong Kong. So what we are facing is a problem that all new migrants, Hong Kong had 2/3 of the people or students are migrants. And then, or unless you tell me that all those who haven't given birth to children are more Hong Kong born people. But in any way, it's around 1/3. So those people who migrate to Hong Kong don't want other people to migrate to Hong Kong. So it's around the world, the similar problem. Is very small number of students are really, so Hong Kong is a migrant city. And there are 4 to 5% father migrants and 1/5 are mother migrants. And if both parents, we are talking about a lot. And a lot of students are born in Hong Kong now, but there are also a lot born in mainland and coming to Hong Kong. I'm trying to give you some background information comparing Hong Kong to other places. This is salary. I don't know whether you have answered the question correctly. Hong Kong salary. So if we compare US, the better city, they have a wide range. This is all in US dollars. So if they have 50K for principal, the top salary 70K, and usually for bigger city, you have better pay salary. And in Finland, you have 78 to 83K. And I don't know whether you are aware of, in Hong Kong, the secondary school principals can have around 200K, which is like 3 times that of a Hawaiian principal. So even you get the same grade, we are talking about people migrating to other places. Even if you migrate to a place which is rich enough, even you can get identical job, you are losing 2/3 of your salary. Those are the teachers. And how about the teachers? Teachers, even for the average. So I think the general picture is that we start very similarly to the richer economies, richer countries, but our maximum point is really quite high. And Finland doesn't use their salary to attract. They have a good tradition that they can attract students who originally may intend to do medical doctor, but they become teachers. I think that is the way they have provide a high quality education. Teacher salary average US and better than Finland, but principal are not high. And so you can use all these data to compare and understand. I think the biggest problem in US is that the local community, the tax collected there, if it's a poor place, then probably they can't get a lot of money, and their principal and teachers are not well paid. Now on the exam performance, so PISA compares students, a represented student around 5,000, at least 6,000 students in each place. So the leftmost column is the GDP per capita. And you can see, I don't know whether you know that, Macau actually is higher than Hong Kong. Although some people still hope or believe that Hong Kong GDP is high. But Macau has been improving a lot. And then in terms of exam result, the reading, there are 3 subjects, reading, math, and science. You can see that Macau is actually 1 or a few marks higher than Hong Kong. So they improve gradually, and they become quite well, because it's such a small, like 1/10 of the size of Hong Kong. And China, BSJGs, Beijing, Shanghai, Zhejiang, and Jiangsu. And they perform very outstandingly, particularly in maths and science, around like 30 points or 40 points above the second one, which is Singapore. Of course, it's not the whole country participating, but the size is really large. It is around half the size of US population already, because those places that you think that they're poor, not well equipped, the population size in those provinces are small. So we're talking about half the size of mainland China, or half the size of US in mainland China, who have very, very good results academically. So these are all applications. I think US, if you look at the small points, and US On reading is sort of all right, 13, and UK 14, Australia 16. I think USA has a lot, and they try to catch up in mathematics for whatever reason. Their mathematics is like half of the world, but the remaining are places you don't want to compare with, like Africa or South America. So they have a large room to catch up in math, but in science is sort of all right. So Hong Kong is very good since the first exercise 2000, and it's still in the top few. Finland has been doing very well at the beginning, but you can see there is 7. Drop a bit in math and in science as well. So it's a problem. If you're doing well, the only way you can change is going down. So what is the problem in Hong Kong? If you compare, if for those older, you ask your parents, in Hong Kong historically, we have around 40% of students doing the 3 science subjects. But now we have dropped to like 3% of students doing 3 science subjects. So how would it affect us? Hong Kong has been very, very well, like in the top 3 or 4 or 2 in science. So Hong Kong, if you compare Hong Kong reading with the other places, Hong Kong has 14%, 15% of high performing readers. So we are talking about level 5 and 6, which are the highest level. Hong Kong has very high, very good. And even if you compare with the mainland 4 places, Hong Kong is just like, they are just 1.5 hours. And in terms of math, so Hong Kong is not the best, but the other places are just marginally. For example, Macau is even slightly less than Hong Kong in terms of good mathematicians at age 15. Okay, how about our science? In science, we have been doing very well before the DSE reform in 2012. So Hong Kong is just 7.8%. And if you compare the mainlanders 4 times our best science student. So even we claim that we have better English, we have better whatever, they have 4 times students who can answer the questions correctly. This is the mainland, and this is Singapore. Singapore is 3 times. And more shocking is even Macau. Macau has twice the number in a class. They have twice the number of students who are good in science. So Hong Kong wants, I think what we need is a major restructuring of our science curriculum. So all other places are better than us in terms of doing good in science. Okay, if you look at the world map in terms of equity and high score, so we want, if you are top in the graph, that means you have higher score in the test. If you have, you are in the right, then you have high equity. So equity means that irrespective of your parental socioeconomic status, you perform well. So if you calculate correlation, there's no correlation between your parental education, income, and your score. So we believe a good education system is one that you provide good school. So irrespective of your parents' education level and income, you can do well. So the best corner is the top right, which is high score. So who is doing quite well? Macau have the highest education equity. So it's Macau, irrespective of the parents, is just primary school graduate. They can still achieve very high score. So the next is Hong Kong. And you can see Estonia, which is replacing Finland. Finland is here, so Finland education equity. So in Finland, if you migrate to Finland, find a better school in terms of, or find a better parents to bring you there. So your parents' socioeconomic status affect your performance. So you have to find a good school. If you go to UK as well, Taipei USA is here. So BSJ is not doing that well, but it's just in the world middle, but they are doing very good in the exam. But in terms of equity, it's not as good. And in Singapore, if you migrate to Singapore, then probably you have to be in a better school. So, and you have to bring your, change your parent to find a more educated and a richer parent. So in Singapore, your family SES determines or explain a lot of whether you can do well or badly in your exam. So in terms of Hong Kong performance, Hong Kong is actually quite good in performance as well as in equity. So these are ones in the middle. So if you go to UK, you have to find some private school because they can provide a better education. And some people believe that if you migrate to another country, then you don't have to memorize so many things. In 2012, because in that wave of study, they asked students, what would you do when your teacher teach you a new topic? Would you memorize the thing? So would you use the memorization strategies? So this is the OECD average. So OECD are countries which are relatively more developed countries. So this is the middle. So who is not memorizing? Thank you. So Macau is good. Macau students are not memorizing. Taipei, Hong Kong are good. So it's Shanghai, Singapore, students are in the middle. We ask students, which strategies would you use? Would you memorize the thing or would you try to understand the thing? So these are in the middle. So who is memorizing a lot? Sorry, it's not working again. So US students, Australian students, and UK student. So all those countries you are migrating to, their students are memorizing. Sorry. So I think the message to us is that if you can't get a teacher who is good in math, which is a problem in UK, for example. UK are having a lot of migrants as their teachers because at US, similarly, they can't find teachers who have high score in math. If your teachers are not good enough, then what the teacher can ask the student to do is to memorize the steps and can't explain. So finding good teachers is very important. So there are places that you don't have enough good science teacher, good math teacher, then students are memorizing. And there's also another study, like what we're doing today. I think around the world, people like to work on projects. So we ask students, students work on projects. We ask teachers, students would work on projects that require at least 1 week to complete. And this is a blue line. You can see TEDx average is here. Finland is actually well below the economies of the country being examined. So Korean, Singapore are doing a lot of projects, whereas Japan, Finland, Estonia. Estonia is sort of replacing Finland now because it's a small economy but doing quite well academically. So I think contrary to our belief, so if you visit Finland, you thought that everyone there are doing projects. Sorry, it's not the truth. It's doing actually just below the average of all other. And would you develop and administer my own assessment? So we teach our teachers that they should design their own assessment and give feedback. So provide written feedback on students' work in addition to a mark. But if you look at the green line, so who is giving feedback on top of the marks? it is Shanghai and Singapore. So Finnish teachers do not give feedbacks, written feedback, they just give marks. So I think with data, we see that a lot of things are not as we have expected. We have wrong impression of what they are doing. You thought that Finland is doing a lot of projects. No, sorry, no. They are writing a lot of comments. No, they are not doing that. And people also argue that in Asia, students are not satisfied. But around the world, actually, there's a negative relation between satisfaction and achievement. So you can see Beijing is here, BSJG, Beijing, Shanghai, Zhejiang, Jiangsu is here, Hong Kong is here, Macau is around, but UK is also around. So I think the dichotomy that Hong Kong system is bad, and they have a lot of anxiety, a lot of whatever, negative things. But actually the world is not divided in that way. All those economies, they are doing well in exam. Their teachers are not satisfied, their students have high anxiety. I think there's a cost to pay. And the only two exceptions probably is Finland and Estonia. And who have more meaning in life. So we talk about suicide, and we think that students in Hong Kong are committing suicide a lot, and Asian students are committing suicides a lot. So we want to see whether they have meaning in life. So who has the highest meaning in life is UK, USA, and mainland China. I think what it tells us is that what determines students' meaning of life is the economy of the whole country, rather than what you believe Western are always good and Asian are always bad. So you can find who is at the end is those that we want to migrate to. I think they're bad economies and the students don't find life meaningful at all. I think this is contradictory to a lot of common belief. And we also train our students to have high self-concept. They always think that they are strong, they're good, and they're the best in the world. But if you look at the statistic, we have self-efficacy, the blue. So those economies on my left-hand side are those have high self-efficacy, high self-concept, believing they are doing well. So you find a lot of South American, African students around here. And who are the students that don't think they are doing well enough? So you can find a lot there. I mean, so, and the red is their real achievement. So what you can see is that it's sort of a random match. There's no particular relation between a country achievement and whether the country students believe that they are strongest or the weakest. And I think recently, even a lot of famous people that ask you to stay hungry, right? Stay hungry, and not saying that you are the best in the world. So you can see that in some economies, even UK, their students do not think they are well. They are doing well in the exam, or they are doing well in their learning. So you can find that even in Finland, in October 13, they have to celebrate a failure day. So not making everyone happy and the strongest is the best way of education. If you think that that is a good way to educate people, making everyone feel that they feel good, I think you miss out a large part of what education should do. And in US, we talk a lot about no child left behind. So what that means is that we try to make sure all students in a school will have similar achievement. We compare students within school, so it's a more statistical concept, between school variance. So in Japan, school varies a lot. So if you migrate to Japan, you have to find a better school, I think most parents. But in Finland, the variation between the school is small. So if you migrate to Finland, you don't have to find a particularly good school because all schools are similar. So this bar, the darker bar, it shows the variation between schools. The lighter bar shows the variation within a country, within each school in that country. So you can see that in a Finnish school, the student variation in abilities is huge. So there's nothing called no child left behind. In a school, you have a very bright student, but you have also students who are doing extremely poorly. So if you look at this in mainland China, actually, they have their way of reducing. They don't talk about it, but they have their ways of reducing the variation of ability in school. 教育扶貧啊 in Chinese is 教育滅貧. So you really remove the weaker student in class. You either kill them or you make sure that they achieve a certain level with their classmates. And the use of IT, probably this is the last topic, which is related to what you try to do. We in 2015, OECD published a report on how IT is used in school and how IT is related to their home. So the x-axis is use of IT in school, the y-axis is use of ICT at home. So there's a strong relation. These are the countries which use a lot of ICT in school. So Denmark, Netherlands, Australia, Norway. So we should invite them as speakers. Okay, and these are the places that don't use a lot of ICT. And Finland actually is funny. Finland has a lot, is sort of mediocre in use of ICT at school, and they don't use a lot of ICT at home. Extremely low ICT at home. I think they switch off their internet at home. So it's more use of ICT at home and in school is correlated. And they find that compare this country performance in the last 12 years, so sort of in PISA, how did the country score change? We find that those countries, Australia, Sweden, New Zealand, Netherlands, Denmark, all these are countries using a lot of ICT, and there's a zero line here. So all those countries using a lot of ICT, their marks decrease rather than increase. And all those countries not using ICT, actually the marks increase in those year being examined. So I think you have two conclusions. Either you remove all your computers in the school, or what it tells us is that in the last 12 years or 10 years or 20 years, actually we haven't used the ICT correctly in the school, or ICT does not help. I think the main problem is that if you add sounds, add graphics, it won't help the deep learning, because if you are learning a subject, what's important is you really learn the basic things. And the relation is actually a curvilinear one. The analogy is that if you add drawings to a milk bottle, it won't help the healthier development of school. And I don't know whether you read of, in some, even in Silicon Valley, some schools advertise that we don't use ICT, we don't use information technology. Thank you.
Maybe let's take a group photo with Professor Hao. Okay, thank you, Professor Hao, for sharing and let us know more about the education problem in Hong Kong. Then we are glad to invite Dr. Data Ng to share experience of his AgTech companies and some insights in AgTech. you please just briefly introduce yourself to let our participants know more about you?
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Data. Firstly, you may wonder why I call Data. These very common questions. Let me explain it. Because when I was young, I loved a sci-fi called Star Trek. One of the characters is called Data, and I found it very special, memorizing, and easy to be spot among people. So I call it this land. And I got my PhD in physics and Bachelor of Science at the University of Hong Kong. And after that, I start my own business in education technology called Fintech. And that is my brief introductions.
As we know, you do the startup about education. Can you briefly introduce the startup that the 42 Lab, is it?
Yes, 42 Lab and Fintech. And Fintech and 42 Lab, we are doing education technology, and we focusing on few things. The first one is about STEM educations, science, technology, engineering, mathematics educations. But we are not a normal STEM education company, because normal STEM education in the market, they are usually teaching the AI, coding the mobile apps, and making some robotic arm something. At the beginning, I started Fintech doing similar thing, but we build the 3D printers. And after a few years, I think I should do more and explore more market and help the student in Hong Kong and Asia more, so that I shift my focus on more things like biotechnology, AI, and quantum computing. So my company is doing these few things. For the biotechnology, we not only building the hardware, software, and curriculum, we also teach the teachers how to teach the students. And for other topics like AI and quantum computing, we try to make the hard things to be more approachable and make more few examples to help the teachers to teach in the secondary school and even primary school.
Wait, you just said about teaching like quantum computing AI to kids, right? Wait, so what inspired you to do so? Like quantum computing and AI, like even now as a college student, I don't really know much about it. So like, how do you guys ensure like the kids will understand?
One of my principles is we need to teach the student the skill they use in the future, not the skill used up now, because in the future, those skills will be in histories. And of course, you may think that the quantum computing is very far, but indeed it's very useful, and in some cases we are using it now. For example, for one of the applications of quantum computing is for the encryptions. Because we usually do the e-commerce or internet banking in internet, the cybersecurity is very important topic. One of the foundation of encryptions and cybersecurity is generate the random number. But the traditional old computer, they generate so-called P or pseudo random number is even fake random, because we could trace back the seed of the random number, so we can repeatedly generate the same number with same seed. So for the quantum computer, we use the real random, so that we can make the we can make the e-commerce system very secure by using these functions. And also, one of the obstacles of the traditional computer is the computation power for some specific topic, like finding the drugs or testing the new vaccine. Because quantum computer, they make use of the quantum physics, exactly the same mechanism we are using in our body, because the interaction between the protein and other protein of the drugs. So for the quantum computer, it helps us to make the drugs development faster and more safer. So it's still it's still developing, but we need to make the student understand more to prepare them to explore this field when they go up to after university.
You just mentioned about like a lot of encryption and also like synthetic biology. I'm just like curious, how do you communicate these with a kid? Like, like these topics all require a lot of prerequisites and like knowledge to understand, right?
I think the most important thing is make the student think these things are interesting and make what they learn relate to their life. For example, you may eat the fake burger in some restaurant or supermarket, but what is it? You have no idea, and the school and nobody teach you what is it and what's the benefits or what's the hazards of having it. So I use this topic to teach the student how to DIY those meats and also make them think what's the benefits or what's the hazards of having such beef, because this artificial, it may having some benefits like reduce the carbon gases, make the environment better, but is this really good for our health? I think it's important for the student to rethink whether a new technology is really a good thing or bad thing, or they have to choose or they have to think what's good or bad by themselves. Yeah.
I see. Curiosity is definitely the main driver of knowledge, and I do agree that. Also, like, do you have any challenges that you encounter when starting these startups?
I think doing education technology startup in Hong Kong is very hard. First, because the core of education is copyable. It means the barrier is very low, and everyone can teach, and even they are not good teachers. So I think it's one of the obstacles that I need to overcome. And also, for these problems, I think the solution is you need to grab the core technology. Just like if you're using an AI, using some technology to solve a problem in education, so that the people would like to copy you, they are very hard to copy. If, for example, there's in few years before, I was invited to go to expand in a countries, and that's funny that the government of the country, they have their IT team and they will copy the commercial products. So for my approach is I need to work with that government, but I need to prevent them to copy me completely, so that I make my own hardware and also I have my own software to integrate the data so that the copycat cannot copy the data of the students.
I would like to ask some question about in the design thinking process and during the start of building a startup, and how can you choose the target audience the first step is to amplify in the design thinking process, and how can you choose the target audience?
I think the first thing is you need to try. Yeah, I think it's the most important thing. And also, you need to test, because there's some misconception that the one who use your product and the one who pay for your product is different. Especially, it's very common in education market. The one who pay for your product is usually the school principal, the government, and the one who use your product is a different group of people, just students, teachers, or even parents. So you need to think about who is your customer and who is your users. I think you need to be very careful about that. And the other is for some people, they think firstly you think they are not your user, but at the end they will use your product. It's very strange. So you need to test. You need to make the interview and finding the feedback of the user and customers.
You mentioned a lot about testing. So like, can I ask you like more about the methodology of the testing? Like, do you use minimum viable product or any testing methodology? Or is there like any methodologies that's really specific to the education market?
I don't think so, because it's very common and very systematic or theoretically said that you need to have a standard test, standard survey for your. It's very common in any design thinking courses, I think, but it's the same as the thing you learn in school is theory, but the real thing is you need to talk to your customer and find out what is their main problems and find out how your product and any solution can help them. Of course, the minimal viable product may help, but sometimes you can just think bad to think that there's a minimal viable product, but at that time, it's just a patch or just a temporary solution for you at that time. But I think testing and see how the feedback of teachers, the student, the user, I think it's most important to see is your solutions whether can help them to really make the learning and teaching process more easier, more efficient, and especially is whether your solution make the student learning happily and more engaging. I think it's much more important than how much they learned. I think keeping the student more curiosity is most important in any education process.
Yeah, I do agree. And also, like, we also know that you have like really experience in physics, synthetic biology, and also hardware hacking, like as a professional. Like, how do you find these intersection of like different academic disciplines useful in your career? Like, is it what inspired you to come up with this startup?
At that time, I think most of the things drive me to learn different subjects is curiosity. But after a few years later, after I graduate from university, I read a book and mentioned about the Elon Musk, one of my idols, and he mentioned a term called the expo journalist. It means you need to expert and really understand a few subjects more deeply. Just like for me, I have a PhD in physics. I learned that very deeply. And at the same time, you need to learn different topics widely and more in different ways. So I think for me, being expert journalist is one of my goals and one of my interests because I would like to learn different things and find the common things and find how different subjects and how they relate and how they solve to each other. Just like for a topic called bionics, it's a very common subject in biology. It means we refer to nature to solve the engine problems. It's just like Airbus in their new aircraft. For their war, traditionally they use the aluminum and stack it in very symmetrically. But after that, they refer to bionics. They refer to the structure of the tree and make the structure of aluminum irregular and refer the structure of tree. And they found that they could reduce the amount of the materials and make the airplane lighter but more stronger. So I think finding different topics and subjects, their common things is very important to make the solution interesting.
Okay. So you have talked about like a lot of how you try to stimulate students' interest, but like, could you talk about like what actually is edutech? Because like we have been talking about a lot of like how to revolutionize like the market, and like what do you think is edutech?
I think one of the simplest definition is we use the technology empower educations to make education more efficient, more engaging. And it could be either how the student to learn more efficiently or how the teachers teach more efficiently. And people may think that edutech may be very high-tech or very using deep tech something, but indeed not. It's just like in the ancient times, people used the craft the stone to record the data, but now we use pen. For such technology, for the Asian people, it's very high technology, but now it's not. And so for me, one of the useful thing and one of the important thing for education technologies, we need to ensure that those technology is good for the teachings and learning, and it's not whether it's very high tech or low tech something.
So we talk about like technology, and I also know that like there has been a dilemma about like whether technology is actually empowering or like harming education. So the previous presentation also mentioned about this. Like, do you think IT is actually like beneficial or actually harmful to education, particularly like the issue of technology addiction?
For me, I'm a physicist and technologist. For me, of course, the technology help the quality of life and also the learning efficiency and teaching efficiency, and especially in the education environment. For your mention that the technology addiction is, I think it's a real problem. Even I usually grab my phone 24 hours 7, and I think it's problems, but however, we need to, the best solution is we can make these addictions, if we can make these addictions to transform it to a learning or teaching addictions, I think it's very good behavior, good things in our education system. And also, one of my motto or one of my core thinking is the more advanced is technology, the more important is about the humanity and the morals. Because technology has helped us to improve our quality of life. So if I have a kid, I will let him or her to use the technology later so that to help her or he or her to learn or understand more human interaction before engaging the technology. So that's it.
Yeah, I do agree. Technology is definitely a double-edged sword, and we do have to use it wisely in order to like effectively use it. And speaking of technology, do you see like we understand like innovations in education are actually closely tied with technological breakthroughs? Like there might be breakthroughs in systems, but like maybe new technology, maybe like recent gadgets, like maybe some education apps on the gadgets can also help us to improve our education. So do you see like there's any recent technological advancement that might like revolutionize education or like improve Hong Kong's education?
In general, I think one of the things I think very amazing recently is about the virtual YouTuber and AI. Because and I think most of us learn things from YouTube now, but usually these things are taught by real persons. But in these 3 or 4 years, there are many countries that invented virtual YouTuber empowered by AI, so that they could teach you just as a like real human. I think it's very amazing. Even though it's just a recorded video, I think it's very important. And also, if the technology more advanced, that virtual YouTuber could really interact with real persons. I think it's very important for the student could ask any questions so that they could get a good or very efficient answers. So I think these virtual YouTuber and AI are very helpful in our education system. Even we usually use YouTube for entertainment. But I think it's many people using YouTube to learn anything. Just like me, if I'm not familiar of a topics, I would go to Google and search in YouTube to reading some introductory video to learn the basics. I think it's very common for the usual student. And also, for the AI, one of the other application I think very amazing is about personalized learning. I think it's very important because in our traditional school, one teacher need to deal with 30 students, and they are the teacher using the same teaching methodology, same engagement, and send feedback for all students with different needs, different thinking style. I think the personalized learning may help the student more engaging and more learn faster and more efficient. Because in the classroom, sometimes I think you may think that there's something you have learned and you understand that the teacher will need to take care of the other learning ability students so that they could teach something you think very silly and very not interesting. So I think personalized learning could help the student can find their way learning and and also help the teachers to teach more efficiently.
Let me ask a question. Basically, metaverse will surely be the next trend in the next decade. And how do you think it will merge with the education in the future?
I think one of the powerful things of metaverse is about, and metaverse is a new term. I think the more understandable terms is virtual reality nowadays. One of the beauty of virtual reality is we could engage different people in different time zones, different locations. So that for the metaverse in education, I think we could use that to have more human interaction with different people from different locations, different ethics. It's just like we could engaging the student in America at the even in different time zone in the metaverse. It's just like we use Zoom to teaching and learning now, but Zoom is still very one-way teaching and learning things. Zoom is very difficult to replace the experience in classroom or even in some seminar or exhibitions. Because in exhibitions, sometimes you will go around different locations and you will hear over some interesting topic and you could stay and discuss with other peoples. Even there are some other technologies other than Zoom, they have similar functions, but I think metaverse may be adopt some overhearding technology so that they could make the student more engaging and even teach more efficiently.
Sure that Zoom is very one-way teaching, and I believe that metaverse is surely will help the interaction between the student and also the teacher. And maybe let's move on to the question from our participant, Chloe. I was curious about something. In India, there are many online teaching services and education applications for students. Why are these education tech business models so successful there, but not the same in Hong Kong and China?
I'm not sure about in China, but I think in Hong Kong, we are too good to have so many things more accessible. It's just like we can go to the tutorial center just within half hours or within 45 minutes, but in somewhere like India or in somewhere remote in China, they may need to go to the town center for around an hour driving something. So I think it's one of the problems that the education technology is not that well developed in private sector in Hong Kong. And also, as I said before, because the education technology is very low barrier, so that there are many people they could engage in the market. And also, and at the same time, I think our teachers or in our education system in Hong Kong is very well developed, so that not many people really lead that part indeed. And also in some wealthy family, they could usually hire the private tutor at their home in Hong Kong. It's very common in Hong Kong, even in China. So I think it's one of the major differences that's why Hong Kong and China, they're not having good education technology in company in Hong Kong. And also the business model is not sustainable because our government is too wealthy and spend a lot in the education. So that they for market in Hong Kong, we don't rely to the private sector.
You're also talking about the education system in Hong Kong, and also I also acknowledge that the system in Hong Kong is very different from overseas, maybe the US, the focus is different, and also the examination system is also different. So can you share your views on the differences and also similarities between these two systems, and how Hong Kong system compared to
the education in Hong Kong is very unique. With that, I think is something like a unicorn. There are no other countries like Hong Kong that for example, in some countries like Singapore, for their secondary school, more than 80% of schools are government schools. They are governed by the government, and the teachers are the civil servants. And in Hong Kong, the differences, we are only 20% of schools are government schools. So, and it's extended that if a government would like to implement a same standard or same things for all among schools in Hong Kong, it's very difficult. The government need to talk to the other 80% and government subsidized schools, because those schools, they are subsidized by government but not really controlled by government. Those teachers, not civil servants, is privately hired by the school. And I think it's one of the major difference, so that the administrations is different different between the schools in Hong Kong. It's just like in Hong Kong, if you go to one school and they're very different in other school, because the administration and governed by the principal are different, because they could use their own standard or using their own style to. Even the government, they have a guidelines, but they could just follow the minimum basic requirement. So the school in Hong Kong is very various. So I think it's the other differences in Hong Kong, so that the parents in Hong Kong, they would like to go to a famous school because they have some understanding and they understand the standard of this school. But for the new school or some not famous school, they are not trust or not familiar those standards how their student how their kids or students.
Thank you for sharing about the difference between this education system. And I would like to bring back our focus on startup. And as you know, maybe before startup and finalize the last product, and we need to go through a lot of testing. And can you share with us one of your prototype during your designing the final product?
You mean how I moving from the prototype to the final product?
Yes, right.
I think in the engineering aspect, I make the so-called minimum viable product. It means I just make a prototype that only show the features. And it may be just a bunch of PCB, the electronic board, and all the electronic components. But when you move from prototype to the final products, you need to make the user more feel better, so that you need to add more design thinking or more design elements there, so that it make the things more appealing and also more make people more feel more good and more easy to use. And I think this process is much harder to design or think of a minimum viable product. And also, one of my challenge I encounter is finding the factory to manufacturing this product in low minimum order. And luckily, Hong Kong, we are close to China. There are many, especially in Shenzhen, there are many factories to help to manufacturing, but it still need around, for each batch, it's for our company, we need at least 1,000 products. It means we need to pay for 1,000 products first, and we stock it, and we need to sell it later. So there's one of the challenge I feel. And yes, I think the most important thing is in between from minimum viable product to the final product, you need to many testing, many more engage more your user and customer, and ask them how they feel your prototype version 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and go on. So this is one of my experience.
So thank you so much for your insights. Okay, so here moves on to our last question. So what is the advice that you would like to give to our participants, especially the ones that are interested in joining the educate industry?
I think one of my advice is good luck. Just kidding. But I think it's very For me, that's, I don't know how to say, but doing something in education or making something impact in education is very useful, but sometimes it's very hard. You need a very passionate, and because student or user, they're not that treasure what, because some people they don't like learning. It's nature. So you need to think more and more and more, just like teachers, to think what solution can help your user or student to learn more efficiently. And one of the other thing is you need to think a solution to pay forward. So most of my product is help the teacher how to teach. Because for the passionate, I think most of the teachers, they are passionate in teaching, but they are not good at the teaching skills or not good at the technology skills. So I make some technology to help them to teach. Yeah, so and the other advice is you for the for those participants work in the edutech, they need to think how the current stakeholder think, just like teachers, principals, parents, students, and other users, how their current solutions and how those current solutions can be improved by your products and solutions.
Thank you very much for sharing. Yeah. Maybe let's take a photo.
Yes, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Raymond, for his sharing. Now, we will have a short 15 minutes break and return after with the last panel discussion of the day on the topic of climate change tech. We will now start our last section of the day. Let's give a warm welcome to Mr. Raymond Mack to share his field and insights on climate change tech.
I heard that there are a lot of people online, so we got a kind of decentralized connection today. So thank you everyone for your time. I'm very happy to be here today, and I introduce myself. I am Raymond, the co-founder and CEO of Pharma CNHK, and today I'm going to share with you some of the technology that is related to climate change. And then when we talk about climate change, it's not about climate change alone, but then how we get connected with this issue, and then we are talking about more and more different kind of values. For example, sustainability, smart city in the future, and so on and so on, okay? So maybe I will start not taking it so commercial, all right? We're talking about the issues that we are trying to solve. And then we go through this journey together in the next couple of minutes, and then we talk about how we're going to tackle these issues on a global basis, all right? Okay, so I would like to know, okay, what is it? Can everyone see it? It's an Earth, right? But can anyone tell me, all right, what exactly happening here? Burning, right? Burning. Which continent? South America. Can we be specific? Which part of South America? Amazon Basin, right? Which year is it? Yeah? Okay. Let me talk about it. 2019, around August or September, if I remember correctly, okay? This is a very devastating news. In that year, it was an Amazon Basin wildfire, all right? It's happening in the middle of 2019. It's a very difficult year for the world. But when we say this wildfire, okay, it is not the only wildfire alone, okay? We talk about wildfire every year, okay? But this one is a very serious one, okay? Because it's burning almost 900 equivalent, the land of Hong Kong, okay? Millions animals and also billion kind of plants, got burned, in this natural hazard. Remember, when we say natural hazard, we will talk about whether it is a really natural hazard later, all right? But more surprisingly, or actually more is a more sad news, okay? When we see the world map, in that year, it is not only Amazon Basin, burning in that year. You can see that actually in Middle Africa, when we say Congo Basin and then Indonesia rainforest, right? They're all burning, okay? And then we say, okay, yeah, maybe there's a very dry weather at that year, and then there's a natural hazard all the way long, right? And then we're talking about the climate change. But when we say climate change, okay, it is not exactly a natural hazard, okay? Why we have this kind of burning every year, okay? It is because of the human agriculture activities, okay? So we call slash and burn agriculture. It is a very primitive type of agriculture activities, okay? You can see people, the inhabitant, right? They use fire, to burn their land, okay? To get some plain land, for different kind of agriculture activities. For example, they're raising cattle or actually planting different vegetables, all right? And this is a very alarming issue, right? Because we are actually killing our land for our own food, okay? So we say we have to stop this because we have to get the agriculture activities out of the rainforest as soon as possible, right? As much as possible. This is also something that World Wide Fund, okay, has been advocating as well, all right? Because it's very ironic, because we burn this land for meat and also the green produce, but then we are killing, you know, our lung of the earth, right? But the issue is here. When we say we want to retreat the agriculture activities from the rainforest, where's land for farmland, all right? So that's another pressing issues that we are facing. Urbanization, all right? When we say urbanization, we say more and more people, you know, coming from the rural area to the city area, okay? And this is a trend already. So I would like to ask you a question, okay, about the urbanization and the population boost in the coming few decades. And then we are talking about how pressing it is in terms of searching for land, okay, to feed ourselves, all right? So here's a QR code. Here's a QR code. Using your mobile, we do a little bit of the interaction here, okay? I want to know your opinion, okay? Take a look at this on the question. What is the estimated global population by 2050? Literally 28 years later, okay? Anyone knows our population figures right now, worldwide? It's about 7 billion at the moment, 7 to 7.2 billion at the moment. Okay, so 28 years later, what will it be? I want some response, you know, from the audience here and also our students and friends online. Okay? Anyone get your votes already? You get your votes already, right? Everyone, right? So let's see the results. Good. You got it right. Okay, so 56% of our friends here, you know, got it right. Okay, so we are going to have 9.6 billion people in the next 28 years. Okay, so it's actually a kind of big boost, right? Because from now 7.2 to 9.8. Okay, it's a big boost. Okay, and many of them are actually, you know, result in urbanization, coming from, you know, rural area, you know, to the city area as well. Okay, so there's a lot of boost. And then when we talk about this, okay, then we actually need to feed 2 billion people in the next 30 years. Okay, and where we find the land, right? How much land do we need? Almost 600 million hectares of land. You know, can we comprehend these kind of figures when we talk about the hectare of lands? Probably we don't know, okay? So here we are. We are talking about a land that is equivalent to 2 Indian continents. You know, we have to find 2 India, okay, to grow vegetables, or actually to produce meat, you know, to feed the upcoming new population in the world. Do you think that it is possible? 2 India? No, right? Probably not possible. So how can we do? What can we do? Okay. And then another questions. Where can we find farmland? Okay. So when we say it is not possible, and then where we can find the farmland, we are talking about the next questions here. Okay. How many percentage of farmland in this world is located right next to our cities? Because we say we want to retreat, you know, the agricultural activities from the rainforest, and then we want to find the farmland, you know, to feed the increase of the population. So where can we find it? Okay. 100%. 40% of our farmland in this world is located right next to our city. Okay. Someone saying 60%, 70%. Okay. Keep going. Okay. More and more think that only 40%. Right? Okay. Yeah, get you. All right. So, I'll get you the answer. 60. So, 60% of our farmland is actually located right next to our city. Some of the figures saying that it's 40. Some of the figures talking about 60. It's actually ranging. You know, that it depends on the definition. All right. But the thing is, this is so pressing. You know, the challenges, because it is the picture that I like very much. Because when you look at it, You look at it, this is Hebei in mainland China, and this is the photo taken by The Guardian, okay, the media company in UK. And then we take a look at this, okay, most of the farmland already get captured by the development of a lot of tall buildings, right? And then we can foresee these pieces of farmland, they are going to extinguish, very soon, okay? So which means that these 60% of the farmland in the world, right, they are under danger, okay? Because we would take out, from the original farmland, turn it into something urbanized, right? This is serious because we can't find anything to solve our problem, okay? So then we say, okay, if we lose the farmland in the city, all right, then of course, it's very easy, right? Like, the resourceful area like Hong Kong, we go import, right? We import vegetables from somewhere with a lot of production, and then we come to Hong Kong and then to feed ourselves, right? It makes sense because we are talking about the globalized village, right? So here we are. When we talk about the self-sufficiency rate, okay, in Hong Kong, make a guess. 100 of our daily consumed vegetables, how many percent of that is actually coming from import? So many of you saying 95% up, 90%, 85%, or no one guesses 80%, right? Yeah, okay, here we go. Oops. Make co-host, yes, okay. 98.3%, can you see that? Scary figures, which means that for 100 plants that we consume every day, less than 2 coming from Hong Kong, okay? So more than 98% of our plants coming from either mainland China or other part of the world, meaning that we lose our control in the food and also the nutrition intake that we have. Why I say nutrition intake? Because there's a lot of issues coming here. When we say, Raymond, whenever we go to supermarkets like this, okay, we see a lot of very beautiful vegetables coming from New Zealand, Australia, US, mainland China, so on and so on, okay? When you see this, you take things for granted because when we ask some of our next generation, like the babies, right? When we ask them, like, where do you find the vegetables? Where do vegetables come from? They won't say farm, they say supermarkets, right? Because they don't have a concept about what farm will look like or what the function of the farms, okay? But then when we say all these kind of beautiful vegetables, there are some alarming figures that I would like to share with you, okay? First of all, okay, these kind of vegetables are all coming from different parts of the world, right? And this kind of international food traffic, creates 70% of global carbon emission, all right? 17%, okay? And Hong Kong contribute, quite a part of it, right? Because most of our food are actually coming from different part of the world, right? And then when we say, okay, fine, we can't feel it because, in Hong Kong, everything is good, right? The food looks beautiful, right? Looks fresh and everything, right? But actually it is not. Because when the food, okay, especially fresh food, vegetables, after they harvest, when they come to Hong Kong, okay, almost 70% of the nutrition gone, all right? Because of the dehydration and everything, right? So we result in one thing. We pay way more for the transportation. But then in exchange for what? This kind of quality, okay? So we pay more and then we get less. Does it make sense? And then we are saying that we are in a very resourceful city, okay? And worst of all, okay, when you say, okay, but we get what we need, is it really true? We say yes, but then we do a lot of waste. Because do you think that all these kind of vegetables will be consumed by Hong Kong people or the customers? Probably not, right? Because they look good, but then at the end of the day, they will get withered or some dead leaves, and then they will fall by the supermarkets. And then the 4 major brands of supermarkets in Hong Kong together, okay, they discard 14 tons of fresh vegetables every day, okay? because of the whole logistics, because of the whole, food supply chain issues, it's actually having a very big problem. Okay, so this is the issue and this is the world that we are living in. And then, do you like this kind of world? You like this kind of life? Probably not, right? Because it creates a lot of fresh food issues, nutrition loss issues, and also climate change issues, right? So we say, no, we have to restart all this, right? We have to gain back the control and then we gain back the healthy lifestyle, right? That probably make it more sustainable, okay? So this is why the pharmacy team and also some of our, players in the same industry, some of the, technology that share the same values we like to do, not only for the Hong Kong people, but also, for everyone in the world, all right? So we say, let's do something, okay, to solve the food crisis right now. So how to do it? So before that, we need to do a little bit of the science and a little bit of the research to see how we can improve from the original and traditional type of activities that we are having. So when we say agriculture, then we say, okay, then how we can improve from the traditional soil-based organic agriculture, all right? Why we have to improve this? Because, more than the issues that we are talking about, because in terms of the energy, in terms of the natural resources that we are consuming for the agriculture activities, you can see 70% of the fresh water in the world, okay, actually go for farming. A lot, okay? It's not for you to wash hands and everything. It's actually go for farming activities. 70% of fresh water. And then 25% of the greenhouse gas emission comes from agriculture as well, okay? So by default, it is a very high energy consuming and also, natural resources consuming industry. So we say, okay, if we go away from the traditional agriculture activities, then we say, how we are going to do this? Some of us will talk about indoor farming, indoor hydroponic could be a way, okay? People will ask why, because indoor, probably we use more energy, or probably, we use more lights, and then something is not so natural, but then why we do it? Because there should be some benefits, right? On the benefit side, we hope that we want to do a little bit of quiz with you guys, okay? Again, we say, we use hydroponic, okay? 水耕, right? When we say using water as a medium, probably use more water, but that is not true, okay? It saves a lot of water from the traditional soil-based farming. So here, make a guess again, okay? How much less water does indoor hydroponic use compared to the traditional farming? Make a guess, make a guess. Everyone okay? Good? Wow. Anyone saying 93%, 68%, and here we go. Okay, 93, okay? Save a lot of water, okay? Because all the water goes to the plant roots, okay? They are not going to, to the underground water or absorbed by the soil, but then not 100% go to the plants. So the efficiency is very high. And that's why hydroponic, okay, in its ideal terms, they save 93% of the water, okay? That's why we want to do some of the technology here, right? And then next, as well, in terms of water, we know it's safe. And then how about land? How about land? If we have, hydroponic, then whether we do it on the outdoor land or actually in the indoor land. Why we do indoor land? Because there's a reason. So now make a guess as well. How many % of land worldwide developed as organic farm? People keep talking about organic farm. Organic farm is actually good because it's so natural. They don't use any pesticides, agrochemicals, so natural. But then what is sustainable? When we say sustainable, which means that, everyone can get it easily. And then, the whole business model easy to get. And then also, of course, the resources, we have something to support it, from time to time. But is it easy to get the farmland? All right. So make a guess. All right. So many people saying maybe only 1% of our land are regarded as organic farms, which is true. Okay. only 1%. Only 1%. Okay? So is it possible, for us to really rely on 1% of organic farm in the world and then to feed the increased population in the coming 28 years? Probably not. They need to be very innovative, So, oh, wow. Give a hand to Tom. More, come on. Very quick. Okay. Great, okay, that's a quiz, right? Okay, give him some hands. All right, so, and then when we say, okay, so indoor is good because we save some water, and then we probably need to find more land, but how about the safety, right? If we need to do some of the food efficiently, right, we have to talk about the safety. And this is good because when we do it in indoor, okay, we can minimize the disturbance from the external factors, right? One of the things is about the pest, okay? If we can keep the pest out of, the indoor farm, or maybe clean enough, not probably 100%, but then, minimize and keep it as a low level as possible, so we don't need to use pesticides. Just imagine if you are healthy, you don't need to take medicine, right? So when we don't need to apply pesticides, which means that we don't need to apply any toxic chemicals to the plants, which means that they are very safe and they are very clean, right? And at the same time, when we stack up in the indoor area, just like this, right? Beautiful hall and then with a lot of high ceiling, right? Ideal place for my farm, okay? So we can stack it up like the tall building here, right? Just like how we build a tall building for the people in an urbanized city. We can easily double or triple or even more, for the production. And then for the hydroponic, okay, they can use a better use of the water so that the roots are actually developed in a vertical shape so that they can grow in a more packed area. So when we say hydroponic, we're always talking about with vertical farming and indoor farming, we can save a lot of land, probably 99%. So when we save 99% of land, then that's a chance for us to find a better place to scale up the indoor farming and then try to feed our people, right? So that's the basic, and that's the reason why we want to introduce this kind of technology. But all right, the challenges that we are facing is actually way bigger than we thought, right? Because it's not that easy, to find all this kind of land and all this kind of technology in different parts of the world. And then, human behavior is not only dictated by science, logic, and all things, right? When you need to change the mindset, when you need to change people behavior, to make them consuming the imported vegetables, to now local grown, right? That's not only technology can solve the problem. This is a very important message because I want everyone to understand, even the startup or technology company like us, okay? We won't believe technology itself or alone can solve everything, okay? It's always about using the technology to make people or make the operation more convenient, more stable, more reliable, all right? And then, with right business model and also the right operating model to make things work. Right? This is very important message. So the problem that we are having right now is actually much bigger because if you go to the supermarkets, right, do you actually recognize which brand is local and which brand is actually imported? Hope you know, right? When you go to the supermarket and then you look at it and it's like, okay, it looks good and I buy it, right? Even the strawberries, anyone recognize there's a pink strawberries in supermarkets? 粉紅色嘅士多啤梨，有冇人見過啊 ？Anyone? Not even recognize, right? Okay. I asked some of my friends. Okay, some of them recognize. But then when I ask, which brand is it? Which Japanese brand is it? They will say, no, I don't know. Okay. So that's the thing, right? Even you want to grow something locally, other people recognize it. Other people will go buy it, and then to make the whole thing sustainable is another issue, right? So the thing is not about growing something sustainably, but also how to make this kind of mindset and awareness implant in the DNA and the blood of people, in the urbanized cities so that they start changing their behaviors, right? So this is the exact change that we are talking about. And then this is why we want to use different type of farming, okay, in the city, to push things forward, okay? One of the things that to make people change their mindset is for them to understand, to engage them, right? When you know that's something that's good, when you know this kind of good things is affordable and it's delightful, then probably you will use your money, to buy it, to acquire it, and then gradually change your behaviors, right? So awareness is a very important thing. Now, Hong Kong people start being more and more innovative, okay, using rooftop, and then you can say there's a lot of rooftop farm activities and movement that's going on in the city, and which is very good. As I love rooftop farm, okay, but then when we say rooftop area versus the indoor area, which one is more? Probably indoor, right? Because there's a lot of indoor, different layers, different levels, right? Rooftop only one, per building, right? So of course it is easier for us to, to use the unused rooftop to do something. But then again, it is not that easy, to control the climate and then to grow something, on the building. Okay, but then this is a good movement, I would say, definitely good movement. But then how we can use the technology to further accelerate the movement? That's the question. So when we say this, we say, okay, so the pharmacy or our decentralized technology kicking in, in this point of time. We say this because we say, okay, if we do it ourselves, if we do it with some of the partners, right, probably the speed is not fast enough. The impact is not big enough. So the best way to do is to empower or share our capabilities with everyone, in the city, to empower them to farm in the unused space or the space that they think that they can turn into farming area. And it will be much faster, because if I share the things with you guys, and you can use your corner or your hall or your classroom or whatever to farm, it will be much faster, okay? The only thing is the reliable technologies, okay, and the setup, whether we can scale up quickly and make it safe and make it trusted by the people or not, okay? So this is what we have been doing. And when we do this, not only about the technology and the sharing, but also engaging the partners to help us to talk about the story, to help us talk about the good things. Because probably it is the first time you see me, okay, you may not trust me. But then if I can engage some brands or some stakeholders that you have been in touch for years, okay, which means that you have trust on them, okay, when they get it into, your life, when they say this is something is good, then probably you trust them way more than you trust me, right? So this is the power of sharing with the good people, sharing with the trusted people to help you to push forward. So which means that we talk to restaurants, we talk to supermarkets, hotels, schools, household, everything. Most of the population can get into those kind of settings, and then they explore and then they experience it. Okay, so we unlock the space of all these kind of urban settings to grow vegetables. All right. So this is one of the projects that we do. Okay, in City Super. Okay, Times Square. All right. Probably a year ago, and then we are going to relaunch the whole thing in a few months' time. So I love this picture, not because of my partners is here. Okay, it's because the setting. You can see this is the mobile farm that we have. Okay, within that we have all the IoT, all the data-driven environment control already set up for a very reliable and safe plant growing environment. Okay, but the thing is, we define the use of space, because when you look at at the cold storage on the left, okay, they are using a lot of energy, right, just to slow down the degradation of the plants, okay, for you to buy them. But then in this setting, it looks like a fridge, right? But then it is not a fridge, okay? It is a farm, it's an indoor farm that is, always operating within 18 degrees Celsius to 24 degrees Celsius, okay? They are warm, a little greenhouse, okay? They only use roughly more than 100 Hong Kong dollar for electricity in a month's time, okay? Much less than air conditioning, okay? And then they can sustain the plants because whenever the plant is inside, they will not die. They will keep growing, okay? But this one, okay, if you put it for more than a week, okay, probably you don't want to buy it anymore. So this kind of thing is like we use the same piece of land, not only for selling right now. You know, we decentralize our production. Okay, we share the energy, we share the space, we share the time with the engaged partners, and then they do better things because the plants inside is way fresher and way better than the others. Okay, and the imported plants, they create a lot of different CO2 and all that. And then, so this is the thing. This is how we achieve in different supermarkets, not only in City Super, but others, right? Like Yatta and also, you know, Marketplace and different places. So you can see ultra fresh because there's no degradation, okay? The tastes are different. You can feel that, okay? I hope that, you know, one day I can send you some plants, you know, for tasting. And then most importantly, we can grow with roots, which means that I can present you the products with roots. You can continuously to grow or sustain it after you buy it back home. Okay, you don't need to kill it. You don't need to put it in the fridge. You know, to keep it. Okay, you can just keep it like this with water. It's fine. Okay, so the whole shelf life is much longer and much better. And then most important thing is 100% transparency, which means that you can see, you can witness the whole growing process with trust. Only you see it, you know there's no pesticides, you know how you grow it, then you build a trust. And trust is valuable nowadays. Okay, so this is something that we would like to bring to the city. And then next step is, so when you say how much or how sustainable it could be, when you say you save the transportation, you save everything, right? So we make this kind of measurement with some credible organization, okay? And then we say, okay, one mobile farm, which is, you know, a vending machine size, you know, farming system, we can save roughly 1 to 1.3 tons of CO2 emission a year. So imagine we already had around 30 mobile farms in Hong Kong right now. So each year we are proudly saying that we can save more than 30 tons of CO2. You know, for the planet, okay? So considering the size of a startup is pretty remarkable, okay? And then we hope that, you know, with the scale, with everything, we can make a way more better impact for the world, okay? So this is how we achieve our things. And then, additionally, not only about the CO2, okay? When we grow the plants on site, which means that they don't need to discard a lot of vegetables after their degradation, right? So over the last year, with a 1 year pilot, we are very happy, you know, to have some shared information from the supermarket and saying that in our counters or in our sales, okay, we only record 8% of food waste, okay, which is way lower than the norm of the supermarkets of the fresh food, because most of the supermarket they discuss 40%, okay, of the fresh food, and now we only got 8%. All right, right. This is a remarkable saving. All right, and at the same time, because of this beautiful mobile farm with these differentiated products, I won't say the name, but then one supermarket clients, okay, they decide to, you know, take away one brand, overseas brand, because we come to their shelf. Okay. So this is something that we really want to do. We are not saying that the local farms are competitors. No, never. Okay, we promote local growers. Okay, every local growers are our friends. Okay, the imported brands. This is something that we would love to see more and more local brands, but less and less import brands because of the obvious reason. Right? Okay. So this is what we say, the new green normal. Okay, but then our vision and what we want to do is not only limited in supermarkets, even though supermarket is the thing, is the place that you can go and get the vegetables more conveniently. But then when we say not green normal, right, we make different things, you know, in your daily life, implanted in your daily behavior, so that we want to make the farms everywhere that you can see. So we do this, okay? We're not only talking about the farms in supermarkets. We build farms with different partners, right? So on the right-hand side, this is the farm in Twin Moon Town Plaza with Sino Group, okay, that we want to, build a farm, to raise the awareness, at the same time, harvest those plants, to work with the F&B tenants, okay? So the restaurants in the mall will use our plants, to power that dish, to make it more delicious, to promote the sustainability, okay? So people start having a really, really good awareness on that. And then because of that, we get this idea flourished to other malls as well, okay? So you can see now we have City Walk and other malls coming in this year. And then at the same time, we make some really innovative projects with F&B outlets. So we collaborate with a very innovative F&B brand, which is called Innofo, and then we open a restaurant in Cyberport. It's actually quite good. I mean, the food. So do come and then to try, because we want to make everyone with a very delightful experience, so that they want to engage a more green lifestyle. Okay, so that is very important too. And of course, not only about shopping more, F&B, but we do education every day. Okay, so we transform our whole journey, which is our vision and our view on the global challenges, and then how we do technology and how we use the business model, operating model to change the world, and then to repackage it into a STEM education, and also the different kind of education course, to share with the students. Okay, so we always say, as a startup or as a tech company, getting the market know our products is an education journey, because we have to educate our customers, and students is our future generation, and definitely this is a target audience that we would love to educate. So we will go into the schools, and then we talk about IoT, AI coding program, how to make sense of the whole thing with the greens. Okay, so this is the school. And then also, not only about commercial and education, we also want to wear our social hats. Okay, so this is the program, and this is the sites that we built with the support of the government and also the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Okay, in the Kennedy Town on the coastline, it's a very beautiful non-profit making community farm. Okay, just to promote the concept of urban farming. And in this urban farming, it's not only about hydroponic indoor, but then we also get connected with other local players, like the outdoor organic farm and also the aquaponic, to make people so accessible to all these kind of very popular agriculture activities in Hong Kong. Okay, so that they can regain that kind of awareness that something can happen, in the heart of the city, and then to push this new green normal forward. Okay, so this is only like 5 minutes walk away from the Kennedy Town MTR station. So if you have time, do pay a visit, because beautiful scene, a lot of interesting things there. Okay, totally free as well. Okay, so because we initiated, and then very grateful that we have a green architect and also a very good-hearted NGO to run it. Okay, so we feel very thankful to them. Okay, so, but with all this, is there any challenges? I would say always, when we say changing the world and then also you apply the technology, we always feel challenges, okay? One of the challenges, we say, of course, COVID, right? Because, COVID, we slow down a lot of projects, and then, we have to have a lot of different new plans because of this, right? But that's one important thing that I would like to share with you. Whenever there's a risk, there's always an opportunity. Because of COVID, there's a substantially increase of awareness about local food as well. Because you can't get food. I think most of you guys, even though you don't buy anything from the wet market, probably you will listen to your parents say, it's so difficult to get vegetables, so expensive, right? So this is exactly what they experience, not only about the educated people, but then also, every single different walks of people in the city feel the impact of COVID and feel the impact of the disrupted international food supply chain, right? So that's the opportunity for us to say, maybe there's something we have to start changing. Okay, not only about mobile farm, but one day we hope that we can build this kind of farm. Okay, in Hong Kong or in different part of the world. Okay, because this is a combination of a very good decentralized technology. When we get the data, when we get everyone taste, we can build this kind of thing to scale up, and then to really grow something that Hong Kong people like, or different people living in different part of the world, they would be interested in. Okay, so I hope everyone can get a little bit of the inspiration or some of the ideas through my sharing, because at the end of the day, it's about how to make the world at a better place. And then I hope you all keep yourself motivated, because at the end we face a lot of challenges, but with technology, with your innovation, with all these kind of interesting journey, there will be some positive change coming. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Raymond, for his sharing on climate change tech. Okay, maybe just take a good photo first. Ôi sai,麻煩晒你，多謝你㗎。係 break 啊！ Thank you, Raymond, for his sharing on climate change tech. Next, we will be having our last official training section today. Since after a bunch of activities today, we believe that each of you must have some brilliant ideas to share. So let's have a section of group brainstorming. Brainstorming is a great way to recruit a lot of different aspects at once. This method helps teams think of multi ways to solve a problem and then expand upon them. Each of you can share and mark down your idea into the group. Just feel free to seek help from our facilitators if there's any unclear about this section. Let's brainstorm your innovative idea with creativity.